Dunya is never enough. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, and we find in various narrations, that a person, this insan, is given a value of gold. This insan is given the value of gold. This person will ask for another one. A value of gold is given to one human being, and he will ask for, he or she will ask for another one. Whereas that value of gold is sufficient for generations. You know, I was sharing yesterday, last night in a talk, that look at 1 billion, this number. Do we understand how big 1 billion is? So if you take $1 billion, for example, right? Because the reason why I'm mentioning this is that there's no amount of wealth in this dunya that could satiate the hunger of this insan. It's never enough. It's never enough when it comes to dunya. There are so many people who have told me, Yasir, we've lived a life. Just on Friday after Jummah, you know, like I've seen everything, you know. And now, alhamdulillah, I'm content with whatever I have. Looking at look at $1 billion, for example. $1 billion, okay? If you take $10,000 a day and you spend it from that 1 billion, you take $10,000 and you spend from that 1 billion, it will take you 1,000 days to spend that money. No, 1,000 years. No, 1,000 days. In 274 years, it will take you to complete that $1 billion. $10,000 a day, you will die before you finish $1 billion. So this dunya is not enough. One valley of gold is given, this person will ask for another. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He makes us amongst the shakirin, and He makes us amongst those people that are truly grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at all times. When we talk about the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where do we begin from? One of the best blessings that we have as Muslims is the Qur'an. Is the Qur'an. When we study the Qur'an, we will appreciate the fact that other sciences are flowing out of the Qur'an like rivers. And you get to a point and you see, like, subhanAllah, like the Qur'an is like that waterfall, right? And there are so many different streams and rivers of knowledge flowing out of the Qur'an. Like, where do we begin with the Qur'an? وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that we have made this Qur'an easy. We have made this Qur'an easy for us to comprehend and bring into our lives. I tend to say, when it comes to the comprehension and having access to the Qur'an, that the fact that the Qur'an was revealed in the best language in the world is an inherent sign for us to understand and bring it into our life. Because many a times, unfortunately, we may belong to a culture or may be a part of a culture where we have no zawq, we have no zeal to understand what the Qur'an is saying to us. So if the Qur'an was meant to be just recited for ajr and thawab, then the Qur'an would have been revealed in some kind of code that we would not be able to understand. The objective of the Qur'an is not simply ajr. And this is unfortunately that we have people that unfortunately lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, etc., have failed to recognize that there's so much that we're able to direct in this Qur'an. I will not get into the madameen and the tafsir of the Qur'an. I want to talk about the accessibility of the Qur'an. See, we as Muslims, we don't recognize, again, going back to the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the fact that we're sitting here in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there are people that would do so much to be able to be with us today. And there are so many things that are holding us back. Something as simple as a vehicle, right? Something as simple as not having time. You know, health could be one reason. They would be able to come to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they're not able to do so. See, we, relatively speaking, we have access to the Quran, right? We have masahif here, we're able to download the app of the Quran on our phone. We're able to listen to the rules of the Quran, the tafsir of the Quran. We have access to the Quran. And the Quran is something that which is thousands of tafsir have been written, and there are also tafsir with thousands of volumes as well. The Quran is like never ending, it's like an ocean. We're able to come to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're able to recite the Quran. We're able to memorize the Quran. We're able to understand the Quran. But there are fellow Muslims that we have that are not able to access this Quran. There are Muslims in the community that we have that we may know of, not know of, that don't have access to this Quran. And this deen that we have inherently makes us a selfless deen. We live in a selfish society, but this deen makes us selfless. You may ask, how is that? So one simple example is that the fact that zakah is part of our deen, the fact that zakah is a pillar of our deen, tells us that it is incumbent, it is a responsibility of ours to look after those in need. Not getting into the 50 aspects of the technicalities, that's not the point. The concept that those of you that have excess wealth, those of you that have enough, you are responsible to look after those that are in need. So inherently, our deen teaches us to be selfless. Otherwise, the concept of hoarding was never enough. Right? Through this zakah, when Mufti Yusuf Ghost of Dar es Salaam, before he even went to South Africa, he wrote a thesis on zakah when he was in school. I have a copy even before he went to South Africa to study here. Amazing the economic impact of zakah in society. If zakah did not exist, then wealthy would remain wealthy, and there's no rotation of wealth in society. So there are community members that we have that don't have access to the Quran. And when I say they don't have access to the Quran, there are multiple examples that I've seen in my own life that they don't have access to the Quran in multiple ways. One example, alhamdulillah, I've been serving at jails as a chaplain in 2 counties. I'm one Muslim chaplain for 2 counties in California. There are Muslims in those jails that don't have access to the Quran. So what we have to do, we have to do some chanda, some donations, and then take English Qurans in, whereas every other book is there. There's not enough Quran, so we have to bring Quran for the incarcerated in the county jails. And the county jails are different than the prisons, state and federal prisons, because they're there relatively for a short amount of time, and that is when you're able to access, you're able to talk to them, because they're going through detox and all those things that we'll talk about. Another example of people that don't have access to Quran is, I'll get into it, are people that are not able to recite the Quran. What I mean by that is the visually impaired. The visually impaired. Right? You and I take our eyesight for granted. Right? We're able to look at things, look around, and recite the Quran. Like whenever we feel, think about this, right? Pause and reflect. I feel my iman is getting weaker, or I'm feeling lonely, or I want to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I open the Mus'haf and recite Quran. I feel that void that I have in my heart to recite Quran. Every Ramadan, we stand behind the Imam and we listen to the entire Quran. So we, alhamdulillah, are blessed, and we don't realize it, that we have Barahi Ras, we have this easy access to the Quran ourselves. And this adds to our Muslim identity. And this is very important to know. We're here in the masjid, in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're able to recite the Quran. We're able to do whatever we need to do independently as Muslimin and Muslimat. But in the visually impaired community, they don't have it. They don't have this access. Before we get into the aspect of Muslims that are visually impaired, about them having access to Quran, let's take a few steps back. I'm speaking based on personal experience. The concept of disability, or a person that has a disability in the Muslim community, depending on different cultures, whatever, local, imported, foreign, whatever, is taboo. And I would have to drop the courage to share some of the things that I've heard about family members that have a child or a family member, a loved one that is experiencing a disability, the type of things I don't have the courage to share, sitting here in the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, disgusting things people say and believe regarding disabilities. So you have that pressure that exists. Okay? Then you have, so because of that, the result of that, what happens is, generally speaking, is a visually impaired Muslim, or a Muslim that has a disability, they feel less human. They feel less human. They feel naqis. They feel incomplete. They feel that they are no use to society. They feel broken. They feel that they are not able to contribute and be some kind of, to provide a sense of community to the community. Which of course we know, there's no concept of that. But where are these things stemming from? Allah, where they come from. The different cultural things that are shared around regarding disabilities. Right? So a Muslim with a disability feels less human, broken. And then that results in this person developing major insecurities regarding their being. Less human is a Muslim who are, less Muslim or lesser of a Muslim. So one thing I will share with one of my teachers, I was on the phone with him a few days ago when he was guiding me on this aspect of things, the workshop over there, is he said, Yasir, remember to tell the people one thing. I said, what? He said, based on his experience, he said, Yasir, you have to understand, to remind people that the Quran is a sense of identity for the Muslims, and they don't realize it. We're able to recite the Quran, it's fine. Those that are not able to have access to the Quran, they feel as if they don't, like they're incomplete Muslims. They're not able to recite the Quran themselves. That void that you and I are able to fill by reciting the Quran ourselves with a Mus'haf in our hand, they're unable to do so. So therefore, they feel lesser of a Muslim. The identity crisis that exists is real, very real. Another challenge that our brothers and sisters that are experiencing disabilities are experiencing, the great void of like lack of social life, not having any kind of social life, right? So to give some context, one of the reasons why I'm here, I'm from California, one of the reasons why I'm here is to conduct a Braille workshop, to teach others how to teach a visually impaired person to recite Quran in Arabic Braille. It's important to know Arabic Braille in Arabic. English translation, alhamdulillah, there's no shortage of that. To be able to recite Arabic in Braille using touch is the objective why I'm here. So I have two students. I will just share some of the things that I've learned in teaching them is that, long story short, they became my students. It doesn't matter how they became my students, that's irrelevant. I thought I was going to teach them Quran. I thought I was going to teach them Alif, Ba, Ta in Braille, dot one, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. What hit me was the fact that they felt that this local Imam Sahib is actually taking out time from me. No, there are examples of go to the hospital and a grown man starts crying that my local Imam is here to see me. They're alone, like in the hospital, Bichara is saying, laying there, and you are here to see me, start crying. Similarly, this student in his early 20s, I have to work with him to convince him that no, you're not a burden. It is my honor and my privilege to be working with you to recite the Quran. So the first few months, it took to earn that trust, to convince this young man, hey, I'm your friend, you're not a burden on me, please don't feel that way. And countless times I'm telling you, randomly, like he still messages me, like, feeling that, okay, I'm a burden on society. So before we could sit down with Alif Ba, I had to do whatever I can as a weak, feeble, sinful, forgetful human being to provide some confidence that yes, I'm actually here for you. And let's sit down in the masjid and recite Alif Ba and pray. For something like, again, you and I, alhamdulillah, we're blessed. I was sharing with some brothers earlier that once these two young men became my students, when I'm invited, in the Bay Area, different masajid, people, say, Yasir, come talk here for a few minutes. I'm driving through the area. I pick them up. I take them with me. I drop them back. We're not going to the theme park. We're not doing anything extraordinary, but it means the world to them. Because they don't have that social interaction with others. They're at home all day. The second student, it took me months to get him out of his bedroom. It took me months to convince him to be interacting with him myself, through his friend, through the first student. So these are things that our Muslim brothers and sisters are experiencing that have disabilities, specifically those that are visually impaired in the United States. I'm not exaggerating. This morning, around Zohar time, I got a phone call from Louisiana. And this connection was made through South Africa. Young man, young couple, they have 2 kids, and both are visually impaired. For 20 minutes, I'm on this phone call where he's venting at me that I have nowhere to take my kids for them to learn about their deen. The closest two masjids to him are 20 minutes away. I thought he was in Los Angeles, LA, but he's actually in Louisiana. So yes, Muslims that are visually impaired exist in the United States. What we need to do before we stand up is to make that azm, to make that promise to ourselves, amam Allah, that when we come across someone that has a disability, we will be their friend, we will empower them. And we will not do our part, unknowingly even, to treat them as less human. And let alone that, if anyone here, and this is an invitation, right? If anyone here knows of anyone that is visually impaired, inshallah ta'ala, we're willing to provide a support structure. Even for one person, we're able to travel and to teach the local aima, to teach the local teachers, to teach this one individual al-Fatiha in Arabic. That's the least we can do. Right? So, our brothers and sisters that are visually impaired, they feel less human, they feel broken, they feel that they're not able to contribute to society, they feel that they don't feel Muslim, right? They're not able to hold the Quran in their hand and recite Quran. They're not able to experience these things. Right? It makes it more difficult when they're saying like 20, 30 minutes away from the masjid. So to teach them, we would have to send a bus to their home and then bring them to the masjid. So, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us all to appreciate this eyesight that we have, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made us able. We should not forget those that are disabled. Whatever stereotype or stigma or negativity that exists around those that are disabled, we should stand up against those things. And we should empower those that are visually impaired, those that are disabled. So, as a resource, again, if, 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 if you know anyone that is visually impaired, inshallah ta'ala, bi'idhnillah, I am willing to travel myself to that part of the country for free, right? You don't have to pay anything, right? And inshallah ta'ala, bi'idhnillah, I will teach the local imam or the local qualified individuals so that that one brother or sister is able to recite the Quran and pray. This trip of mine is the first of Sunnah Musad. And today's class, alhamdulillah, we have about 10 students. And we started from Braille and Alif Lam, and we already left to see. So make dua for us, inshallah ta'ala, as a closing remark. I'm part of an organization on this, it's called Al-Mislah, and there's a table outside. If you're able to support, please do so. Make dua for us. Your dua is more valuable than anything that you can provide for us. Why? Because I believe the du'as of the individuals that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is allowing us to serve is what keeps us going as an organization. There are countless examples, subhanAllah, of for the past 8, 9, 10 years, homeless Muslims being taken off the streets, provided vehicles for free, widows, single mothers, orphans. We have a food bank program. We're doing whatever we can that Allah allows us to do to make this world a better place. So please make a lot of dua for us. And this project of this Braille and the Quran is an understood project. So objective is to increase access, to create awareness and to increase access to the Quran. And as a personal note, this is an attempt of Ajiz to present a piece of paper with some scribbles on it and of allowing individuals to recite the Quran in Arabic. If there are any questions regarding Braille in Arabic or an organization or anything that I could answer, more than happy to. To teach someone how to, so I would say so. There are two components: in person to start off, and then there's going to be this Zoom component. So the in-person component, I would say minimum 12 hours, like 2 days, 6 hours each. There's a lot of material to cover. And then it depends on how much time we're able to spend on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis. The objective or the standard I've been taught from South Africa, we will be able to teach someone how to recite Quran in Arabic Braille when we finish the Qaida, Nurul Quran. So it's like 30, 40 pages. We're able to finish that in Braille, then there's hope that there should be some itminan that we're able to teach someone. So there are two components. In person, minimum 12 hours. Dedicated time, no phone, nothing. There's a lot of memorizing, a lot of understanding to do. And then the continuous Zoom aspect of it, it could take a few weeks for us to finish the Qaida.
How long is the workshop?
I would say over 2 days, 6 hours.
Students is able to learn the alphabet.
So, are you referring to sighted individuals? Or oh, okay. So that's awesome. It depends. If the visually impaired person knows Braille, then it's relatively easier. I'm going to say easier. The first student that I have, alhamdulillah, he's in his 7th or 8th juz in Arabic Braille. He's reciting. We start from Alif Ba. So I would say it took knowing Braille plus minus 3 months. It took about 3 months from Alif Ba, knowing Braille. That's very important to know. Now, a person who does not know Braille, you have to teach this person Braille first, which could take 6 months to a year. Sometimes, it depends. Every person is different. It could take someone a month, it could take someone 3 months, 6 months. Once Braille is learned, then that is a foundation. Then you add Arabic or Arabic on top of that, and then you add Timur. So that is for a person who is visually impaired to recite Quran oneself. I misunderstood the question. What I said initially is for us to be able to teach someone else so that that person could teach someone else is the 12 hours person and then ongoing Zoom. Because here's what happens. When we recite the Quran in Braille as sighted individuals, you're reading the dots with your eyes. You see, you're reading the Braille with your eyes. That's why we're able to do it so quickly, because we're able to process that. A person who's visually impaired, it's a whole different ballgame. It's a whole different concept.
I'm just trying to if a person was, for example, trying to learn by feel the Braille. So how is that compared to kind of like if a person needs the alphabet that can kind of transliterate the Arabic, or what do they do from how do they switch from English to is it similar to that or something?
Okay, so a visually impaired person that knows Braille, English, for example, that person has that acquired sense of touch that's able to differentiate this is dot 3 or this is dot 4 or this is dot 5. So that's the hard part, arguably speaking, right? Once this person is able to read in English, then this person just has to memorize the Alif Ba in Braille.
It's not transliterated.
No, it's in Arabic. G. Yes. G. I'm sorry?
What is Braille?
Oh, Braille is, okay, so the easiest way I would put it is those bumps that we see on the ATM machine and on the on elevators, bathroom signs. So it's basically, it's not a language, but it's a code where those that are visually impaired, they read using their fingers. Yeah. And fun fact, We recite the Quran in Arabic from right to left. In Braille, it's the left to right.
Wow, do you have a video of your students doing that?
Gee, in fact, I do. Yes.
If you could send that to us, we could upload it to our website or community.
Gee, definitely. In fact, as a side note, always hold on to your teachers. Let me explain. So let me unpack this a little bit. So, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, I can sit here all night and say alhamdulillah. But the point is, I learned Braille in 2015. I went to South Africa, learned Braille. I was there for like a week. I stayed at the Dar al-Ulum. It's an institute specifically for the visually impaired, where there's tahfiz al-Quran happening, and from Daraba Yadribu to Bukhari in Braille. Like the entire Dar al-Ulum, هو حسن مسجد. So they put up with me for like a week when I was there. Okay, alhamdulillah. So I learned in 2015, and I was looking for someone to teach for the past few years, and then there were other things that were happening in my life, so alhamdulillah all the time. So when I first found my first student, this was back in 2019, who's today in like 17 years. I was, if I had a big head, or if I was egotistical, like I have a big ego, of course, but if I felt that, okay, I'm by myself, then I would have caused more destruction. So I sat this young man down, and I have videos, I have videos of me teaching this young man and sending to South Africa as customer support. Because it's the Quran, honestly, it's the Quran. It's very, Rasmul Khat, subhanAllah, I could talk about it for half an hour. But Rasmul Khat is maintained in Arabic Braille. Ajib. The Alif Lam Shamsiya Qamariya is there. The student has to differentiate the Shamsiya Qamariya. Ajib, subhanAllah. So since it's the Quran, very, very, you have to be very careful. Very, very careful. So after, in the beginning, every few days, they were putting up with me. Right? So to ensure that I'm doing it right, the technique is correct. Why? I've learned it years ago, but he was my first student, and I want to do it right because it's the Quran. If it was Arabic by itself, right? Or whatever, but it's the Quran, it's the Kalam of Allah, very, very careful. So I have some of those videos, one I will share, inshallah, of behind the scenes. Because I'm not shy to say that it's the barakah of South Africa. I'm not Mr. Know-it-all, debate, I'm some special guy. It's all from there, South Africa. And they're still supporting me till today. Any question I have, in fact, what's interesting, subhanAllah, is for the past year or so, they're embossing, that's the correct term of printing, Arabic Braille Qurans, and they're sending a container from Islam. So what that means is anyone that would need an Arabic Quran in Braille, they would reach out to us and we would send it out Majana for free, anywhere in the country.
That was my question. I was asking where they trouble.
So they're doing the easy part, they're doing the hard part for us. They're going to be preparing the Quran. Each Quran is like 7 or 8 volumes. Because there's so much, not to get into technicalities, it takes it takes one line per abada. We'll get into. So the point is, they're sending us a container of Arabic Braille Qurans, so that whoever needs one, they reach out to us and we send it out to them anywhere in Canada, US, and Mexico.
They made out of wood or metal?
Paper. In fact, I don't think I have the grader with me in the car, but I have. It's a very interesting concept of using graders and emboss.
But I saw one back home. It was made of wood.
And Braille. They typically use paper because of cost, and paper gets worn out. Any other questions? Gee, of course. So Madrasa Nur for the Blind is part of an international effort where they meet, mashallah, on an annual basis, where the standardized aspect of Rasmul Khat in Arabic and the Fatawa and all of that technical aspects of it. So indeed, there are in Muslim countries, there are efforts. I can't speak on behalf of Pakistan. Generally speaking, what happens, a person that's a Hafiz of Quran, generally in a third world country, whatever, it's literally just like rata lagana. It's just through just simply memorizing, through listening. Um, so Allah A'lam bisawab. I don't know if there are resources. Is there a Braille center in Pakistan? Allah A'lam. I can't say there is or there's not. There must be.
Well, after today's the blind actually support them even after they've read Braille, they even support them financially. Is that in the plan, inshallah, that eventually the school will be able to do that, setting a small madrasa around them, they have their own students, and they can also become teachers.
So Maulana, honestly, as they say in Urdu, that if Allah accepts us, if Allah uses us, then we want to have a madrasa in the States as the first Braille. Doesn't matter the first, doesn't matter, but as a Braille madrasa of Tahfiz al-Quran, Arabic course, etc. Going back to your first question, Maulana, is the reality is it's 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 extremely difficult for a visually impaired person to land a job and to become financially independent. Very, very difficult. Now, another vision that I have, hopefully if Allah accepts, is the first student of mine. My vision is if Allah blesses us with enough resources, according to mashwara, etc., I would want for him to come on board on a misbah, on payroll, and for him to head that department of prayer. Because he's the first student, and mashallah, his mizaj and the way he is, mashallah, he has the leadership skills, he has the work ethic. I'm not exaggerating. His istiqamah and persistence inspires me. His istiqamah and persistence inspires this guy sitting in this chair. So, that is a hope, inshallah. If Allah uses us for that, he's an excellent candidate for that. And Bichara has been looking for a job for years. He travels to all types of job conventions for the visually impaired. He goes to Sacramento, which is like a 40-minute drive for him on public transit, to go to some kind of school to hire his chance to get a job. And going back to that social aspect of it, I'm pretty much his friend to support him emotionally as well. I know how difficult it is, but I have to be positive with him. If I'm not gonna go one day, one day will happen, one day will happen. So it's the second student, Maulana, is he doesn't know Braille. So I'm teaching him Braille first before we get into Alif. And it's interesting how we teach someone Braille in the first place is essentially you start with your 2-liter soda crate. And they come typically in an 8-pack. So you cut 2 off, and you have 6 cells, right? So the Braille code, if you may, revolves around 6 digits or 6 dots. So one cell consists of 6 dots. So someone who doesn't know Braille, you start off with like this big of a cell, right? And I introduced him to a Pepsi one, whatever, and using his fist, dot 1, dot 2, dot 3, dot 4, 5, 6. And then you're basically working with that person halfway by having him or her memorize the huruf, etc., but also to increase that person or to help this person acquire the sense of touch. So from the 2-liter soda crate, we move down to eggs, like the egg crate, right? With ping pong balls. So today, for example, the students in the morning, how did I test them? I gave them a 6-pack of eggs with 6 ping pong balls. And I told them, show me dot 3. Drop it right there, show me dot. So that shows that they got the concept of the cell. And from there, you move down to Legos, right? The things that hurt on your feet when you're walking on, and then you move down to the brain itself. So it's like you're moving, like you're narrowing down on the sense. It takes months and patience. Like I would say, these two students are my shares. It's not going to be one of them. Like patience, subhanAllah. You think you know you have patience until you teach someone who's visually impaired. It's not a negative bad thing, right? Like someone is your best friend. And we know that when they're visually impaired, their other senses are very, very sensitive. So they're able to sense frustration in your speech. They're able to sense, like subhanallah, and then if they're so sensitivity is like a negative connotation, but like I'm trying to use it as a positive thing here, is that they're able to sense like even like a breath. Now we have to go in as a counseling session. Okay, hey, I'm breathing as an exam. I'm not taking like a sigh that no, right? I'm telling you, it's ajib, subhanallah. So you have to be very, very careful. Even Sanskrit sounds about right when you teach them, because you don't want to give up any kind of that they're avoiding, because that's the number one thing that kills them. For whatever reason, they believe I'm a bojan, I'm a burden. Like, no, right? You're my golden ticket to Jannah. You're not a bojan. So, any other questions?
Yeah, the templates of these rules, are they standard?
So the Quran, okay, so the Arabic Quran in Braille is standardized throughout the world. So you pick up just like you go to any part of the world where there's an Arabic Braille Quran, it's the same that basically we're teaching.
So just like the Quran, there's no
Exactly.
possibility to make mistakes.
Oh yeah, of course there's a possibility. Exactly. So this reminds me of when I was there in South Africa. They were embossing pages of the Quran compiled into books. You cannot afford to make one dot as a mistake. You're gonna have to get rid of the entire page. It's so sensitive. So each page has to be perfect. Like one dot off, or even if the machine does something which is like as an error message or something, the whole page is ruined. So it has to be perfect. It has to be perfect. And there are I saw it like the proofreader just fine. Proofreading the Quran, proofreading what they were printing, just to make sure that it's correct. So, وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ, I've seen it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says with the Quran, I've revealed that I will protect it. I've seen it. But the Rasm al-Khat, that's a whole different topic. It's maintained, and that's a hadith. Yes.
At this stage, it's only for grown-ups, right?
So the phase we're going through right now is to teach adults so that they can teach others in Arabic, like the Quran and Braille. So yeah, it's basically adults that are qualified to teach, that are able to, that have teaching skills, that like an imam or a scholar or a medical teacher. Is for them.
Do you have plans when this class will start?
Well,
Or to sign up?
if you want to learn how to teach others Quran, we'll take my number and we'll be in touch with you after the program. But
Flyer or something?
just my cell phone number is fine. Yeah. If my phone number is useful to you, you could save it Here we go, 916, area code 916. 501. 916-501, 4828. Yasir. So if you know someone that's visually impaired in the community or somewhere else in the States, text me. Yeah, I'm so and so from this state. I know someone who's visually impaired in so and so state. And some contact info, and so on, we'll go from there. Yasir, Yasir. Any other questions, mashallah? Excellent question, mashallah.
And from your experience, do you notice that most of them are very, very smart? Smarter than like you who can see?
In my lived experience, yes. Yes. This first student, I would simply explain a concept, and he would do the entire exercise by himself. Just explaining the concept, and he would do it by himself.
Back home, we had a stranger one time, an old man came from a village. In the morning, he just sleep, he has like a stick. He goes to the city for money. In the evening, he comes back. And always my father tell him not to go, he will take care of him. But as he said, they feel that they are a burden to him. He takes that responsibility to go out and come back. One day, he sent me to go buy bread from him. But he took the money and he just made like this, give it to me. He said, I know how much I gave you, so bring my change back. I went and bought the bread. So he was counting his money on the floor. I sat on the opposite side. I was trying to test him, so I tried to take like a leaf of. He waited until I wanted to touch it. And he's blind. I was shocked. It's like that. It's like he was seeing. And he was sensing. As he said, they have
The heightened senses are, yeah, the hearing is amplified, everything is amplified. Like imagine, okay, what happens when you try to memorize the surah, you close your eyes, so that you're not distracted by what you're seeing, right? Yeah, his students do it as well. Yeah. So,
Inshallah, I hope it works for them in Africa.
inshallah
Because
ta'ala.
Africa is tough on them. Here, we are really, so far good people, we are tough on them. Like, I could simply would have respect for them. You can see them any time and all that. But once they have, just like you said, they are very clever. They might be very clever, really, but you just don't worry about it. They just talent, I think they
MashaAllah, this institute that I studied at was in South Africa, and there were students here from all over Africa, mashallah. Not only Africa, from different parts of the world as well, Middle East and India. I'm flying back tomorrow, inshallah. Yeah, I came on Thursday, I'm flying back tomorrow. The next week, maybe Chicago. Yes.
First of all, Salam alaikum.
Well, it's all right.
Is Isha time at 9:45?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I went on the website and it said 9 a.m. Thank you. I just wanted to-
اللهم صل على سيدنا مولانا محمد سيدنا محمد وسلم ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا ربنا آتنا ما وعدتنا ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد. Oh Allah, allow us to have even a small percentage of the fikr and concern that Rasulullah had of the Ummah. Allah, bless us with the worry and concern of the Ummah. Allah, allow us to empower others that don't feel empowered. Allah, use us for khair and never use us for shar. Allah, use us to unify and never allow us to look in the direction of divide. Allah, bless us with all of the khair, barakah, and blessings that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked of this world and hereafter. Allah, protect us from all of the evil that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam seeks protection from this world and hereafter. Allah, just as you have gathered us here in your beautiful house. Oh Allah, gather us in your house as well. Oh Allah, use us as a source of guidance and never use us as a source of misguidance. Oh Allah, accept this effort of ours. Oh Allah, allow this majlis, allow this program to be the beginning of a lot of khair in the Muslim Ummah. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen. Sallallahu ta'ala